American Honey follows a poverty-stricken teenager who seeks to throw off the shackles of her current life and relationships and see what the world has to offer her in a search for fulfillment and happiness. She leaves behind the responsibilities of parenting another woman's children and a suffocating relationship to embark on a wild adventure with other similarly troubled young adults who travel across America in a van selling magazine subscriptions under the leadership of the domineering figure, Crystal. I feel this film well represents the lives and experiences of disenfranchised young people and also makes a wider commentary on the poverty gap in society, the effects of capitalism, and the search for happiness. Crystal's magazine company forms a neat microcosm of the capitalist model as a whole. It clearly demonstrates how those with power exploit those that they can, and everyone at each stage of the ladder is climbing to the top, no matter who they step on. In terms of the length and pacing of the film, I think it's a bit too long. It is around 2.5 hours, but I feel like 2 hours would have been more appropriate as it can get a bit cyclical at times. You have this relationship being developed between the two leads, Shia and Sasha, and I feel like the film meandered a bit too much there. The focus of the film is a bit mixed up there then, because you've got this personal journey with Sasha, but then also this relationship with Shia. So the focus of the film can shift a bit there between being, this is Sasha's story or this is Shia's story. I feel it perhaps jumps backwards and forwards a bit too much on that point, but I think that is quite reflective of how life works in general. Unless you're around somebody 100% of the time, or even if you are, you're still going to have that internal dialogue. You're growing as a person, as an individual, and with other people, which I think was exhibited quite well in the film. In terms of the themes discussed in the film, I think the central idea being explored is the conflict between our animal desires and urges, what's hardwired into us, and the things that have been manufactured and synthetically induced in our society, things that are perhaps unnatural that we do. Crystal, the leader, forces the losers to fight when they don't succeed in her business goals. She establishes this company where they go out and do all of the work, and she's just in this position of power, driving around in the sports car and then showing up at a motel at the end of each day. And then she hands out punishments or rewards. So she's this boss figure who doesn't have to do much at all and just swoops around, takes 80% of the money, and then fires or hires people on a whim. There's a few scenes in the film where you see the relationship between Shia and Sasha growing. They quickly establish a sexual relationship, and we see 2 encounters throughout the film. Despite the risks involved, they intentionally do not use contraception. She says later in the film that she does want to have kids. So this is really just presenting the conflict between the natural urge that people and animals have to have children and be fertile, and the way we've moved past that in a society. We've invented this product which stands in the way of one of our most basic and natural functions. I don't really think the film's forcing an agenda down our throats. It's just presenting things and saying, ooh, look at this, look at that, maybe this is weird. Think about how this thing we do is unnatural. It's interesting that Sasha makes such a big deal out of wanting to have kids, because when we actually see her interacting with kids at the beginning of the film, she seems to see them as a burden. Sasha's character is about 18, and at the beginning of the film she's looking after these 2 young kids who are around 10 and 4, and they're looking through this dumpster looking for something to eat because they can't afford any food. They end up finding this rancid old chicken, which for some reason they take back to their house as if they're going to prepare it, and then the kids spend 5 minutes just messing it up, destroying it and making a mess in the kitchen. Sasha's boyfriend turns up, who I think is the kid's father, and it's really uncomfortable when he shows up. He just is expecting her to cook for him, and she gets really upset with him, and he doesn't notice at all. So she's just breaking down and getting upset, and she ends up running away from this whole situation by joining this group of people selling the magazines, who she just runs into, who basically then spend all their time smoking weed. I think the point of the children is just to show how irresponsible everybody is, because they clearly aren't being cared for properly despite the adults in the film wanting to have kids. You have this adolescent desire for independence and to gain a sense of agency, but there's no accepting of the responsibility that comes along with it. Sasha just runs away from looking after these kids by dumping them on the mother, so she's not responsible, The mother's sure as hell not responsible. Later in the film, Sasha comes across another family. It's just his kids running around, and the mum is on heroin and she's out, and the kids think she's asleep, and it's really sad. Basically, everyone in the film is a terrible parent, and it's all horrible. It's interesting, Sasha becomes very preoccupied with honesty and integrity in her sales interactions later on. Shia just likes to bullshit people, but she's not having any of it. Everything about that customer salesman interaction is all bullshit. It's just a facade, and she doesn't want anything to do with it. She wants to conduct herself with integrity and find this niche and make this money, but not lie to people. Another thing that's quite interesting about her character is the relationship she has with animals. I don't think in the film she actually eats any meat, but at the beginning of the film she finds the chicken and she kind of, tokenly supports that. She provides the meat and then gives it out to the family. There's also several times in the film where she's interacting with bugs, so you kind of explore this power dynamic there. She rescues an ant from a pool or a fly or something, and then later in the film she rescues a spider and takes it out under a cup. It's like her mission through the whole film, just to save all the bugs. There's a scene in the film where she has an argument with Shia and gets abandoned at this petrol station, and she ends up getting a ride with this truck driver. Shia's the best salesman ever, and she's just trying to prove herself. So she's with this guy, and she eventually manages to sell some magazines to him. But then when she gets out of the truck, she realizes that it's actually taking a load of cows to a slaughterhouse. And then she seems completely traumatized by the whole experience, which is a bit strange because she was serving the chicken earlier in the film. I think the director's just saying ooh, eating meat's bad. We need to reevaluate this part of our society. Which is strange because the film seems to care so much about kind of pushing society back to these natural roots, and then seems so critical about the kind of artificial progress and other changes that we've made to society that are unnatural. A move to vegetarianism would be a transcendence of those natural urges, because we very clearly have an omnivorous history, and it's very much in our DNA to eat meat. There's a strange scene where she's sitting out in the woods and then this bear comes along. And then she isn't scared of the bear and it just comes up and stands next to her. I wasn't exactly sure what it was getting at, but I felt it was just trying to show this animal desire in her to be just one with nature and everything. She's just hanging out with this bear. I'm gonna be nice to bugs and my best friend's a bear. Luckily it didn't eat her. There's this whole wolf howling thing that happens between Sasha and Shia, where if they get lost, he'll just howl like a wolf so they can go shag in a bush. The ending of the film's kind of strange. They're all having this big party, and she's sort of made up with Shia. After they've had this big fight, we learn a bit more about his character, and it turns out he's actually not that much in control of his situation, and he is also a victim. Crystal's really the bad one in control of everybody, who's pulling all the strings. Shia hands Sasha this turtle, and they're all dancing around this fire. She goes and puts this turtle in the water, and then swims out into the lake herself in the dark. She goes underwater, and then the music gets really big and emotional. It's all coming to the end of the film, and she's just underwater. And then the music stops as she just bursts out of the water, and that's it. That's pretty much the end of the film. She just looks around and it's quiet and she's alone. I think the end of the film is trying to take the piss out of itself a little bit. You can push away from industrialization and say, no, we need to be natural, I'm an animal, and everyone's connected, and I'm going to go save bugs and have friends that are bears and swim in lakes and whatever. You can try to revert back to this natural state, but you need to compromise a little bit because we're not turtles or fish. And then she's just in the lake and she's alone and cold and wet. Boom. End of the film. I think the direction of the film is kind of interesting. I showed one of my friends the trailer and he compared it to this old Levi's advert. I don't know if it's based off that one advert, but I feel like it's definitely parodying that style. It's all shot on this 4:3 resolution and the whole film looks like someone's Instagram. You have lots of these close-up shots of Sasha's face with dramatic lighting and extreme depth of field. The advert obviously has a commercial purpose and they're pushing this snapshot of teenage energy. So you have people dancing around a fire and laughing and smiling, and there's this perfect sunset. I feel like this film is really trying to highlight this experience. But obviously we start off by seeing some pretty nasty things at the beginning. You've got the poverty and the going through the rubbish for food. So I think the decision to present the film like this is very self-aware and nicely ties together the themes of criticising capitalism. And like at the ending where I feel the film is criticising itself. I think the music in the film is interesting because it's kind of celebrating it and criticising it at the same time. You get the Rihanna Diamond song come up a few times and that's like their little anthem. So whenever that song comes on, they have to like get down and start dabbing in a supermarket. That's actually our introduction to Shia and the group, and it's pretty funny. But all the music they listen to is very consumerist rap music. The central theme of this music is just work hard, play hard, make all the money, smoke all the drugs, have all of the things. And they find camaraderie in that. They're a group of people bumming around in this van, and they're all friends and they're all having a great time, but they're all just a slave to this mindset that they need financial success to be happy, which is the mindset of many people today. It seems to be the driving force for so many people that they just have to be successful. And I think that's strange and a bit sad. To me, this mindset seems perhaps engineered by, but certainly to the benefit of, the people on top. If millions of people in a country are convinced that to be happy they just need to earn loads and loads of money, that then makes their lives easier, because those lower down do all the work. Whilst being successful and capable and dependable is important, it's also important to have an appreciation for other things in life, like art and music and culture. I think that should be just as much nurtured as this brute desire to be the most in everything and only be concerned about making money. I think the acting in the film is good. The main actress, Sasha, makes a good performance, even though she doesn't have much to say. I think she says a lot by not saying very much. Shia is very good, much better than Transformers. Although I do actually quite like the first Transformers. I just find it really funny when he's flying through the air screaming his head off. I think this character suits him though, a lot better than his character in Indiana Jones. This definitely doesn't feel like a manufactured studio film. It feels a bit more arty, and it feels a bit more genuine, and his character is a little bit crazy. So I think that suits Shia LaBeouf quite well. I think another point that needs to be addressed is the way the film represents men. There's like one nice guy in the entire film, and that's the guy in the slaughterhouse truck, but everyone else is kind of insane. Shia's character will go around and bang everybody. He bangs Crystal to suck up to her. Crystal then holds that over Sasha. Shia bangs Sasha, and then he also bangs other new girls that get brought into the magazine company. But there's one point when Sasha goes and bangs this oil worker for like $1,000, and Shia goes and beats the crap out of him. You have this tribal beast thing going on, where guys are just knocking the crap out of each other and fighting over women, which is fine if you're then only looking at that very primal kind of courtship that you see in like animals, but there's no representation of a successful monogamous relationship. And that wasn't something that was invented by the Industrial Revolution. You know, plenty of animals have those kind of relationships. It can exist in the natural world. I think overall the film is definitely good, even if it can get a bit drawn out and cyclical at times. I think if you've got an open mind and you just want to spend 2.5 hours watching something pretty that makes some interesting points that are perhaps worth talking about, then go for it. I don't think the film is overly pessimistic, although there are definitely some low points. There's the scene with the prostitution and the kids with the druggy parents. The treatment of kids throughout the film is pretty awful, to be honest. But I do think the film has redemption in the camaraderie exhibited amongst the people in the van. They definitely form a strong bond, and even in the scene where Sasha is introduced to the group, they literally take us around the entire group, so we can kind of vicariously live out that scene as if we were being introduced to those people. You certainly see a lot of the people in the group. One guy keeps getting his dick out, so he'll bring that out every other scene and fling it around and harass people. It is a bit weird, but we also get to see the different sides to the characters as well. One of the girls in the group likes to draw, and she's absolutely obsessed with Darth Vader. So she occasionally says things like, "You know what's inside Darth Vader's helmet? A skeleton, because he's just like us." Which is really funny. I think with this type of film, you know the narrative's not going to reach any particular climax. You have this character going on a journey, and I think the journey's much more important than the destination in this case. There isn't actually too much that happens towards the end of the film, you just get a sense that the characters have all experienced growth. The film sort of makes all the points it wants to make, and then just stops. The ending of the film really focuses on this theme of companionship. We get this nice scene in the car where the music's building and it's all really atmospheric and everyone's just smiling and happy together. And then of course we have the scene on the beach. So you have this nice punchy feel-good ending, which is then just tweaked a little bit by the mixed tones of her scene in the lake where she swims out with the turtle. So yeah, it's a good film. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but I would definitely recommend it.